Long before the era of gated mega compounds, reality TV stars, and influencers live streaming from their living rooms, there was one private home that stood above all others. It was the ultimate symbol of American wealth, fame, and influence. Hidden within the rolling hills of Beverly Hills, California, this wasn't just a residence made of stone, wood, and glass. It was the beating heart of early Hollywood society. For several decades, this legendary estate defined what absolute success in the film industry looked like. It was a stage where real life unfolded with as much drama, romance, and spectacle as the movies being produced on the silver screen. To be invited here was to be anointed as a member of the global elite. Its name was Pickfair. But the story of Pickfair is not simply a tour of luxury or a list of famous guests. It is a cautionary tale. It is a story about the fragility of history, the ruthlessness of time, and how quickly a cultural landmark can be erased from the face of the earth. The King and Queen. To understand the house, you must understand the power of the people who built it. At the center of this world were two names that became inseparable from the rise of cinema itself: Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks. In the early decades of the 20th century, the film industry was still discovering its identity. It was young, experimental, and chaotic. Amidst this transformation, Pickford and Fairbanks rose to become the first true royalty of Hollywood. Their fame was something the world had never seen before, blurring the lines between fantasy and reality. Mary Pickford was known as America's sweetheart. She was an unprecedented cultural phenomenon. Audiences felt a deep, personal connection to her portrayals of innocence and strength. But do not let the gentle nickname fool you. Behind the ringlets and the innocent smile was a brilliant, shark-like business mind. Pickford negotiated her own astronomical contracts, demanded creative control, and, along with Fairbanks, Charlie Chaplin, and D.W. Griffith, she founded United Artists. She wasn't just a star, she was an architect of the entire industry. Douglas Fairbanks was her perfect counterpoint. Where Pickford offered emotional depth, Fairbanks offered kinetic energy and boundless optimism. He was the swashbuckling hero, famous for his athletic stunts, leaping across rooftops and flashing an infectious smile that charmed millions. When these two fell in love, the world watched with bated breath. Their marriage was treated as a real-life fairy tale, a union of the two most powerful human beings in entertainment. And to reflect their status, they needed a home that could serve as the capital of their new kingdom. Building the dream. Rather than buying a finished estate, the couple found a hunting lodge in the then undeveloped canyons of Beverly Hills. At the time, Beverly Hills was not the manicured luxury capital it is today. It was wild, open, and dusty. But they saw potential in the isolation. To transform their vision into reality, they hired architect Wallace Neff, the man who was mastering the California style, a blend of European elegance and West Coast relaxation. The result was a sprawling mock Tudor and Spanish colonial revival mansion that was grand without being cold. They named it Pickfair, a combination of their surnames. This was a branding masterstroke. It was the first time a celebrity home had its own identity, spoken of in the same breath as Versailles or Buckingham Palace. The estate was a marvel of the 1920s. It boasted one of the very first in-ground swimming pools in Los Angeles, setting a standard for luxury that continues to this day. The interiors were a masterclass in global curation, filled with French furniture from the era of Louis XV, rare Chinese art, and antiques collected from their global travels. It included stables, tennis courts, and even a private underground running track for Fairbanks, so he could maintain his famous physique away from the prying eyes of the press. Pickfair was designed to be shared. It was a house built for gathering, where the architecture itself encouraged conversation, movement, and connection. The center of the social universe. Throughout the Roaring Twenties, Pickfair became the undisputed social hub of the Western world. It was said that while movie studios controlled production, Pickfair controlled influence. The guest list read like a who's who of the 20th century. It was the only house in America where one might find Charlie Chaplin entertaining the physicist Albert Einstein. It was a place where Sir Arthur Conan Doyle might discuss spiritualism with the aviator Amelia Earhart. It hosted European royalty, heads of state, and future presidents like Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Lord Mountbatten famously described Pickfair as the American Buckingham Palace. This was not an exaggeration. In a country without a monarchy, Pickford and Fairbanks filled the void. They held court, and an invitation to dinner was the ultimate validation of one's social standing. Witnesses from the era described the atmosphere as warm and lively. It wasn't stiff or formal. It was filled with laughter, the clinking of crystal, and the sound of jazz drifting through the open windows. It was a place where the optimism of the jazz age was concentrated into a single physical location. The slow fade. However, history rarely allows such golden moments to last forever. As the 1920s ended, the world shifted. The arrival of talkies, sound films, changed the industry overnight, ending the careers of many silent stars. Then, the Great Depression cast a shadow over American opulence. Simultaneously, the fairy tale marriage began to crumble. The pressures of fame, combined with Fairbanks's restless nature and alleged infidelities, took their toll. The couple divorced in 1936, sending shockwaves through the industry. The king and queen were no more. Fairbanks moved on, but Mary Pickford remained at Pickfair. Following the divorce, the spirit of the house changed. The legendary parties ceased. The endless flow of international dignitaries dried up. Pickford eventually married actor Charles "Buddy" Rogers, and they lived there for decades. But the house slowly transformed from a social palace into a private museum. As Pickford aged, she became increasingly reclusive. For nearly 40 years, Pickfair stood frozen in time. Outside its gates, Hollywood modernized. The studio system collapsed, rock and roll was born, and new stars emerged. But inside, the furniture remained in place, and the walls echoed with the memories of a bygone era. To visit Pickfair in the 1960s or 70s was to step back into 1925. It was authentic, historical, and increasingly fragile. The death of a legend and the sale. Mary Pickford passed away in 1979. With her death, the final living link to Hollywood's founding era was severed. The contents of the house, treasures collected over a lifetime, were auctioned off. Collectors and fans scrambled to buy a piece of the legend, stripping the mansion of its soul. The structure itself was eventually sold to Jerry Buss, the owner of the Los Angeles Lakers. Buss respected the history and maintained the home for a time, even discovering Pickford's honorary Oscar hidden deep within the house. However, in 1988, the estate was sold again. This time, it was purchased by actress Pia Zadora and her husband, the billionaire Meshulam Riklis, for just under $7 million. At the time, the public was hopeful. Pickfair was an American landmark. Surely the new owners would restore it to its former glory. But behind closed doors, a different narrative was being constructed, one that would lead to tragedy. The haunting and the destruction. Shortly after moving in, Pia Zadora began claiming that the mansion was unlivable. The official explanation released to the press involved structural issues, specifically pervasive termite damage that supposedly made restoration impossible. But as public criticism mounted, a more bizarre justification surfaced: hauntings. Zadora claimed the house was plagued by a heavy presence. She told stories of a woman in white, perhaps a former servant, or maybe the spirit of Pickford herself, wandering the halls at night. She claimed her children woke up screaming, seeing a ghostly figure staring at them from the darkness. Whether these stories were genuine supernatural experiences or a convenient excuse to demolish an outdated home remains a subject of debate to this day. Regardless of the reason, the outcome was catastrophic. On April 22, 1990, the bulldozers arrived. With shocking speed, Pickfair was demolished. The walls that had hosted Einstein and Roosevelt were reduced to rubble. The demolition happened so quickly that preservationists had no time to obtain a court order to stop it. By the time the public realized what was happening, the palace was gone. Douglas Fairbanks, Jr., the son of the original owner, expressed the heartbreak of the entire industry when he said, "I regret it very much. I wonder if they were going to demolish it, why they bought it in the first place." A warning from the rubble. Today, if you visit the site, you will see a massive Venetian-style palazzo standing on the land. It is larger than the original Pickfair, equipped with modern amenities like a disco and a gym. Yet, to historians and film lovers, it feels soulless. It sits on the land, but it carries none of the weight. Only the original gates and the kidney-shaped swimming pool remain, silent fragments of the past, lingering like ghosts. The destruction of Pickfair was a wake-up call for Los Angeles. In 1990, historic preservation laws were weak. A private owner could essentially do whatever they wanted with their property, regardless of its cultural significance. The outrage following the demolition forced the city to reevaluate how it protected its landmarks. In a painful irony, Pickfair saved other historic buildings by dying. Conclusion: why Pickfair still matters. The story of Pickfair is more than just a real estate transaction gone wrong. It represents a specific moment in American history when entertainment became power. Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks were pioneers. They built a world where actors were not just employees, but cultural icons who dined with kings. Pickfair was the physical manifestation of that new reality. Its loss serves as a permanent reminder that history is not self-sustaining. It does not survive simply because it is important. It survives only if we choose to protect it. The ghost of Pickfair still haunts Hollywood, not as a spirit in a white dress, but as a void in the landscape. It is a reminder of the Camelot that once was, and the reckless ease with which we can erase our own past.